Hello and welcome to Media Musings. This is the third that was planned, but what ended up being the first of a theme recap discussion that was planned. But because life happens, those ended up being nixed.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
generally our thing is from now on we're going to pick a theme and let it run for a month or however long. And then at the end of the theme, we're going to have a free-for-all discussion about just the theme in general, things we've not noticed, things we have noticed, stuff like that. That was supposed to be the plan. Unfortunately, when we miss a week because life gets in the way, that discussion kind of gets kicked to the curb because doing the content's more important and doing the actual pieces of media is more important than that later discussion. So this is the first one we've actually really got to do. Although, to be fair, we do tend to incorporate the wider discussion into the last episode of the month if we don't have a discussion for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, also,
so that said,
that there is a big asterisk for the month of March because that is Ring's birthday month. Grab bag of whatever.
Yeah, so Ring gets to pick what they want in their birthday month, but otherwise, generally we go for themes. And the thing we've been running with for the last few weeks, if you haven't noticed, is the Great American Mythos.
Yeah.
Or the United States of Ancient Rome.
Yeah.
Or look, Ma, all the propaganda.
Yeah.
And
can
you tell I have opinions?
Yeah, and though one last bit of bookkeeping out of the way, because honestly, I'm not sure the banner will pop up anyways or any other way. Before we started, I took a swing at the channel punching bag on Twitter.
What did you do?
So
I mean, I 1,000% support you. I don't need to know what you did, but I do want to know what you did.
Yeah. So, she's trying to go with the whole not giving me money is pure think cancel culture thing. Yeah. So I quote tweeted that with, "Hey everyone, if you want to consume J.K. Rowling media without supporting her, you can always buy secondhand. Or there are other options if secondhand isn't available with a certain emoji."
Yeah, with a nice flag that would go above his ship that wasn't connected to any particular government.
Yes. And then I understand HP is very nostalgic for my generation, but you can and should separate the work from the turf.
Yes, you can and should separate the work from the turf, and I don't think that's a swing. I think that's a fair comment. You all know always have been a Potterhead since I was like 9-year-old. But there is a reason my background changed and you no longer have the Hogwarts backdrop that you used to have. Yeah. And because there are certain things, you can still consume this stuff ethically. I still write the fan fiction because I know deep down that the evil bitch can't stand fan fiction because she used to hate it until she realized it was causing more harm than good for her to oppose it. You know, I deal with people who are fans. If I buy merchandise, I buy it from people on Etsy, or I buy it from people at Comic-Con fairs, not people who've paid thousands of pounds for the license to fire a piece of cheap, tacky plastic at you that, frankly, a 5-year-old could have made with some Play-Doh. Yes. Because the official merchandise is very poor quality compared to some of the other stuff. And then there's an alternative market where you can find certain things. DM me.
And then finished the two tweet thread because character limit.
Yeah.
That being said, maybe don't buy the vaguely veiled anti-Semitic conspiracy theory in game form.
Yeah, I was getting there. So, look, you all know I'm a massive Mads Mikkelsen fan. You know well enough that my own spouse paid for me to meet the guy and get his autograph because it's a thing, okay?
Yeah.
He was in the latest of those movies, which they're now saying is the last of those movies, and thank fuck for small mercies, because that cash cow was screaming. Like, there's only so much milk you can draw from it, sweetheart. The poor thing's anemic looking, it's about to drop. You know, you can't even get any meat off that thing anymore.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen that film yet. I'm waiting for it to find means by which I can watch it under the aforementioned flag.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
there's discussions to be had about how to
means to consume
things
it
ethically.
Means to consume it open source.
Yes, open source. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
But there is a way of consuming ethically when there's a problematic creator who is still profiting. Look, when they're dead and gone, when it's Disney who's dead and gone, or when it's who's the fucker who did Stranger in a Strange Land?
Heinlein.
That racist prick. That guy.
Yeah,
when they're dead and gone.
Yeah, I've like if you've been with my channel a while, you know that I have a love-hate relationship with Heinlein.
Yeah. Like when they're dead and gone, by all means enjoy. You know, you're not contributing to their earnings. Their estate's probably bankrupt, you know. Oh, good. Fine, whatever. But when they're still alive, and when they are still actively using the money rolling into them to harm a community, to harm anyone, whether you agree with those people or not, be it on a political point of view or whether you think they exist or not, which, if you don't think they exist, what are you doing here? But, you know, there's ways of consuming ethically, and this thing was the zeitgeist of a generation. Let's make it abundantly clear here, she's such a problem because she was so popular. If she was some 2-bit no-name writer who'd only sold a few thousand books, we wouldn't have this problem with her. She wouldn't be so she wouldn't be so loud. She wouldn't be causing such a problem.
Yeah, and like,
I don't believe in retconning the past. I was a massive Potterhead, and I hold my hands up to that. And frankly, I still say it proudly. And I'm still Slytherin. I still have my Snape tattoo. I still have, this was my childhood. But that doesn't mean that I still have to receive this media as a child. It doesn't mean that I have to receive it uncritically and unethically. I don't pay for anything I do with regards to that fandom, unless it's, as I said, a small creator on Etsy, or I found something in the depths of AliExpress. You know, there's ways of doing it to make sure that your money doesn't go back into the pockets of someone who's going to then use it to try and destroy you.
And
that's all we're saying at this point. You don't have to completely eliminate the entire fandom from your mind or your experience. That's just stupidness. If we did that with everything, we'd have nothing left. I'm sure in 20 years' time, we will look back on ourselves now and find something about an opinion we held that is problematic and cancel-worthy, in quotes.
And, you know, one of the reasons I have absolutely no kind of nostalgia or anything for that, for that franchise, is because I was isolated as, growing up in a very strictly media controlled household.
Yeah. Like, the media wasn't controlled in my household. You're all aware of this. I saw some things way too young and other things, and yeah. But to put it into perspective for you, Rick, I've watched you fangasm over John Scalzi and Jim Butcher.
Yeah.
Those are like your two big names.
Yeah.
Like, if John Scalzi or Jim Butcher come out with a book, I lose Ring for a week. I'm aware of this. Like John Scalzi and Jim Butcher coming out with a book is like Mads Mikkelsen coming out with a new interview. Just leave you alone. Yeah, it's like if I'm reading and a new historical drama drops, leave me to it. A new story about ancient Rome drops, leave me to it. Like, this is a thing. We're nerds. That's why we married each other.
Yeah.
Imagine for a second, Ring, if Jim Butcher stood up in an interview tomorrow and said something racist or transphobic.
Yeah.
And I say racist specifically not because I'm saying J.K. Rowling's racist. I'm not saying that out loud, where she can sue me.
There are potential hints in the media she has produced.
She's a very typical white person in that I don't think she's necessarily interrogated her understanding of race. Doesn't make her racist, makes her potentially ignorant.
Like,
not necessarily a bad thing, worth fixing, but she's not going to listen to me because X, Y, Z.
I'm
very careful not to get sued here.
So let me frame it in this way. She's not Lovecraft, who was obviously racist.
Yeah, she's not Heinlein by any stretch.
I said Lovecraft for a reason, because he was racist for his time. Racist.
Yeah, well, so was Churchill,
Yeah. And I'd say she's probably more Tolkien, where she has a set of uninspected biases that show on the sleeve.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a bad thing, but worthy of consideration if she feels the need to. But the reason I say racist is because it has a similar... when you talk about transphobia in the UK, to understand the depths and the darkness of it in the UK, you really have to compare it to American racism. If you try and compare transphobia to transphobia, UK to US, you're not gonna... It's not on the same level. And I say that knowing full well what some states in the US are doing to trans people. It's not on the same level. It's not in your day-to-day interactions. It's not parents telling their daughters, no, you can't have a toy sword or a toy gun because only boys play with that, and telling their sons you can't have a shopping trolley or a baby doll because that's for girls, and bullying them to the extent that these children bully each other into their gender roles.
Yeah.
This is still the culture in a lot of the UK.
And in America.
And that's what I mean by... It's still at the very core of UK culture. And I mean, racism is too, in a very similar way. But again, racism in the UK and the US are very different. Same animal, different beast. But yeah, neither of them fantastic. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
But if your favourite comes out with something, like, it broke my heart when Meatloaf stood up for Mitt Romney. Yeah. Broke my heart as a teenager when that happened. Like, but I get it. Like, the guy was an old school Republican.
Yeah.
I get it. you have to.
Let's see. Was Romney the one who ran in 2012 or in 2008?
Romney was the one who ran against Obama's second term, binders full of women and kittens.
Okay.
The one you voted for, and I had
that sheepish expression.
Yes, and I had to swallow that when you told me. Yes,
yeah.
I had to. Ring has come a long way in a very short period of time, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, Ring has come a long way. The reason I bring this up, and I think the reason Ring brings this up, is it all feeds into what we're going to be talking about today: propaganda, the way people set themselves up. But the reason with the channel punching bag is she's America doesn't have an equivalent to her.
Yeah, no.
You don't have someone who fundamentally shaped the views of an entire generation. Because we did. Like, you can still talk to people between 20 and 30 in terms of those books. Like, I still have friends who will say to me, oh, you know, the Dementors are circling. And I know what that means. That means feed me chocolate and listen to me whinge because depression's setting in.
Yeah.
You know, I still have friends who say to me, you know, why doesn't football have more than one ball? Like, you know, and it's very much, she shaped a generation. We still, not my daughter, you bitch. That's still a classic line here. I still smile when I say it. Some of these things, they shaped who we are as human beings. They made us better than the person who wrote them.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But that doesn't mean we should forget where they came from. And I think if there's one thing we say on Media Musings, and even if we don't say it outright, you should always, always engage with your media critically. Unless it's a kickback and popcorn movie, in which case, by all means, have fun.
Yeah.
But to an extent, you should always engage, not just with the media, but with its creator critically. That's why we spend a lot of time on Media Musings talking about who made this, why. Because you cannot understand a text, a movie, a song, anything until you understand why it was made. Nothing happens just because. Everything has a reason. There's always a context. And once you understand the context, it becomes a lot easier to understand the intentions and a lot easier to understand the impact of it. And there's a lot of different levels of context and nuance that we like to tease out here, because frankly, if we didn't, we just sit and wave every day, every week, and just be like, it's a popcorn movie, enjoy, have fun. But also because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to open their minds and say, look, I understand that this thing was written by a middle-aged white woman who never knew any black kids because she went to private school and didn't understand what poverty was.
Yeah.
And mummy and daddy were rich and didn't like her teachers. You can tease out ideas.
This animated movie was directed by someone whose subsequent works really make you think that he really likes Ayn Rand.
Yes, exactly. You know, we understand why in the early 2000s there were more war films coming out. We understand why there were more stories about ancient history popping up. We understand why now, in a post-truth, post-Trump world, ancient apocalypse is still in the top 10 of Netflix. What the fuck, people? Like, no. Google it.
Yeah.
Just Google it. You don't have to watch the show. Just Google it. It will debunk in like 3 seconds flat. I know I did, because I watched one episode and debunked it in like 3 seconds. I literally just Googled the name of the site he was looking at, and it told me exactly what it was, how it was formed, and that it was a natural formation, had fuck all to do with human beings.
Yes.
Just Google it. That's what the internet's there for, folks. It's your friend. But again, with this rise of propaganda and this rise of right-wing propaganda, this words don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that's important, because there is this attitude amongst certain political leanings that words don't mean anything and words mean what I want them to mean in my moment. The problem is, when you do that, when you say, pick a word, ring, red. Red, my Christmas jumper, red. Right, pick a word, red. If I say this is red, and you say, no, this is blue, Only one of us is objectively correct.
Yeah.
Like, one of us might be colorblind. It might be what we see, but only one of us is objectively correct. I know what the label said when I bought this thing.
Yeah. Or, one of us is moving in a certain direction at a sizable fraction of the speed of light, and thus the light waves are stretched or compressed.
Did you just describe the Doppler effect?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how to respond to that. So okay, this is the person I married, folks. The Doppler effect. Cool.
Yeah.
You're allowed opinions.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to break objective fact. And they'll do it. They'll tell you that, oh, I can use a word however I want to use it. Opinion is not ultimate. And it's really important because I've spent 20 minutes dancing around this point. I am going to get to it. We are going to spend the next however long talking about propaganda and visual propaganda and media propaganda and even, and it's so important that we have a baseline of words mean things.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean the dictionary, because the dictionary is not prescriptive, it's descriptive.
Yeah.
The dictionary doesn't doesn't tell you what words mean.
Yeah.
It reports what words mean. And a lot of people get that mixed up.
Oh, and
so
fun
I'm getting to the definition of woman. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Okay. So, for example, for however many centuries, the word woman has meant adult, human, female, and that's been fine. Ish. Kind of. We've made do. Because that's what generally the public said, this is what that means. And after 15, 20 years of people saying, actually, no, that's not what that word means anymore. That is not what that word means. That word means anyone who identifies as female. Guess what happens in the dictionary? It gets updated. It says a person, she was assigned male at birth and she is a woman because she says so, because that's what that word means now. And you either keep up or you fall behind. And if you fall behind, all you're going to do is spend your years impotently screaming at a world that's left you behind, because you've got to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
That's my take on that. But that being said, some things are immutable. Some things are not going to change. In 2,500 years, certain things are not going to change. 3,500, 4,500, 10,000, they're not going to change. Okay? It is impressive when people build big ass buildings. It's never going to change. No matter how good we get at it. Because it still costs money, it still takes labor.
The one unifying theme of history is people are going to people.
People are going to people. People in different ways at different times in different places, but they're still going to people. Yeah. Some people eat other people, some people not so much. Some people eat other people out. The language, language does the thing. Yeah. Hey, people go to people. This is what we do. We eat, we fuck, and we build.
And in case that wasn't warning enough, this stream isn't, this show isn't necessarily child friendly.
This show has never called itself child friendly. But yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Down to business.
Yes.
The American myth.
Yes.
I have a theory. But
okay.
I'm going to let Ring jump in.
Well, see, I was gonna go off from what we pinned last week and bring up our little disagreement.
Yes, let's start with the disagreement. Let's keep it spicy and moist, as Sandy has said in the chat.
Okay. And I'm going to put that up because we are talking about the American mythos. So there is
blanket trigger warning for colonialism, imperialism, genocide,
racism,
all the isms, just all of them. Just imagine a rainbow here saying all the isms with sparkles.
All the isms.
The more you know.
So,
but yeah.
And I will put a before I start a couple minor disclaimers. One, I am coming from a background where most of my education was through a very fundagelical mindset, and I likely still have those biases.
You do still have those biases, but I love you anyway because I know you're working on them, and we love you.
Well, and likely carry those biases into my assessment of the American mythos. 2, Noodle is a classicist and likely carries those sets of biases in their interpretation of the American mythos.
Oh, yeah.
And a final overall disclaimer for the topic at hand. Another set. One, the American mythos is still very young in terms of national mythologies.
Relatively, yes.
Yes. It has, unlike other national mythoses, hasn't been dictated from on high, like a certain emperor telling a certain poet to make me some nice propaganda.
No, but there's a nice little 5-sided building that does that sometimes.
Yeah. It is more democratized.
Agree to disagree.
So that being said, given how young and how mutable the influences of the American mythos are, there are very likely many interpretations of what the American mythos is, and many of them are equally valid.
Yeah, look, we're not saying that there's only one right answer here, especially when propaganda's involved. It's a very young country. Just in general, it's a young country. It's only, 250, 300 years old at a push?
Yeah.
Like, not even officially 300 years old. Like, it's a baby. Like, on the world stage, the thing's still in diapers, just like, yeah. It's still crying in a corner. They've given it a dummy and left it alone, you know. On the world stage as it stands, it's very young, but also within history, it's very young.
Yeah.
It's like there are modern inventions. You probably have something older than America in your house if you're not American.
Yeah.
Hell, you might even have something older than America in your house if you are American, if you collect old books, or if you have a family heirloom.
Yeah.
And it depends on when you count America as coming into existence, because that's a shaky question.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, the Constitution was signed then, but there were only 13 states then. But then they landed then, but they also then got wiped out and then landed again. So which one is it? And
also there's the whole, each state thought of themselves more as residents of the state than as Americans up until like the Civil War.
Yeah. And then there's the Civil War, and then there's that adding more states and the Louisiana Purchase and it's really murky, okay? A question that should have a really simple multiple choice answer is 1770 whatever. just doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that is partially what feeds into the mythos. Americans like a nice, clear, this is the answer.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. No, you don't get that. Bad Americans, naughty.
Yeah.
Don't get a clear answer. Just because it says 1776 on the birth certificate, that was a long-ass pregnancy.
Yeah.
If 1776 is the birth certificate, that was a long-ass pregnancy.
Yeah.
With a lot of contractions.
There was a lot of blood when the umbilical was cut.
A lot of blood. There was even blood from people who weren't even in the birthing room, or shouldn't have been anyway. But yeah, yeah. Okay, so now
we've gone through the disclaimers. Of course, hello to Sandy and Beck and whoever else might be lurking in the chat and watching in the future. Now we get into the disagreement.
Right. Would you care to state your point?
So, my point is that America views itself as as something of a Judeo-Christian Roman fusion, as in Rome reborn, but also somewhat Israelish because we're God's chosen country.
Okay, to that point, I don't disagree. However, I don't believe for a second that the Rome reborn thing is accidental.
Yeah.
And I think your background as a fundamentalist Christian raised and etc.
Yeah.
is colouring your view of how important the view of Israel is in America.
Yeah. Now,
because let me finish. Because of the two comparisons, like America is ancient Rome, America is Israel, the one the rest of the world sees on the news is not Israel.
Yeah. And that being said, I put Israel for lack of a better term, unless of course you
mean
are
a promised land.
Yeah, unless of course you are one of those QAnon Trumpist nut jobs that think that the founding fathers were members of the lost tribes and America really is reborn.
I'm not touching that with a badge pole.
yeah, it's like unless, but largely America is wrong as a Judeo-Christian nation dedicated to Yahweh. Yahweh being the fact that I like to give the name of the Abrahamic God, at least as under the Judeo-Christian framework.
The Judeo-Christian Islamic framework paradigm.
Well, I thought Yahweh was called Allah in Islam.
He is, but he's still the same deity. And Islam does categorically state that Allah, however it's pronounced, I'm awful at Arabic, don't at me, is Yahweh.
So which is why I said the Judeo-Christian name.
Yes, you said the Judeo-Christian name, but just for the sake of completeness, when you talk about the Judeo-Christian paradigm, you're talking about the Abrahamic paradigm of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, who all answer to the same concept of a universal one deity, Yahweh/Allah.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of completeness, because I know some people have issues with the concept of Judeo-Christian, which is absolutely valid, because Jews and Christians, while claiming to worship the same God, there's a lot of nasty, bloody, messy history there that I having been raised Catholic, know very little about it, but I am aware enough to know that I don't necessarily anymore believe that that is a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Which is what I was taught. So if I've ever said that, I apologize. That was what I knew at the time. I'm learning. We're all learning. But yes, this fundamentally, we'll call it a fundamentally biblical paradigm of what Yahweh is.
Yes.
Because we all know what the Bible is. We'll call it a biblical paradigm.
Yes.
The extracts of the Torah that made it into the Old Testament and the so-called New Testament and Gospels.
Yes.
So you're yes, it is. It's big brother, little brother, and little brother. Just duking it out.
And occasionally the younger brothers team up to beat up on the older brother just because they can and steal his pocket money.
Yeah.
Wrong.
I will say,
wrong banner.
Yeah. I will say it is it's very telling that you conflate America with this concept of a holy land or a promised land.
Yeah.
Because outside of a lot of fringe groups, that's not an idea. Yes, they had the painting with the angel flying across it and the telegraph poles. What's the word?
Manifest
Destiny. Yeah. But Manifest Destiny wasn't necessarily America as promised land as it was colonizers as missionaries.
Yeah.
And colonizers as disciples.
Yeah.
Or
and then there's, give me you're poor, you're tired, you're hungry, your
huddled masses.
It's yearning to be free.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that was a gift from France. So let's, again with the
statue was a gift from France, but I'm pretty sure the inscription was...
It's Emily Dickinson, isn't it?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
The New Colossus.
Yeah.
Emma Lazarus.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I remember right, it was part of they had a competition to...
Yeah, no, they were raising money for the pedestal to put the damn thing on in the first place.
Yeah.
So, but this is the first bit of American mythology I want to talk about. This idea of give us your poor, your... Let me find the wording. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, your wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Ding, ding, ding! We have a Roman reference. Historically, when Aeneas landed in Rome and Romulus and Remus set Rome up, they needed citizens. They needed men.
Yeah.
So basically, they threw open their borders and said, any man who comes here is a free man, is a citizen. And they got the worst of the worst. They got the rapists, the criminals, the worst of the worst. But they also got runaway slaves who, at the time, were viewed as the worst of the worst. But we've moved on since then. They got runaway criminals.
Basically,
they just got everyone.
So basically, to borrow from the renowned philosopher Obi-Wan Kenobi, Rome in its beginning was a wretched gathering or let's see, a wretched gathering of scum and villainy.
Yes. Just categorically, yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I mean, Rome was founded on fratricide. It's not the best of foundings. But that was there. So we've got these two cultures who initially were formed by saying to criminals, runaways, and people of absolutely no means or under largely the uneducated, the unwashed masses, if you like.
Yeah.
Come, build, farm, live. And they grew from there. We know that historically, according to the histories of Rome, which they generally accepted as true, but pinch of salt, folks. They're written as a mythology.
Yeah.
It was a very violent beginning when they needed women instead of because they only drew in men because criminals run away. They're all going to be men. Generally in that time period, when they needed women, instead of going out and dating them like normal people, they went to a neighboring village, if you like, neighboring city, and just kidnapped a bunch of them, which, trigger warning, kidnapped in that era meant captured, bound and raped. That's what that meant.
Yeah.
It wasn't just grab her and bring her home. It was do the deed, get her pregnant. We need a bloodline here. There was no messing around.
Yeah.
If you want to complete that vicious act of heinous violence with passing around smallpox blankets, that's entirely up to you. It's right there if you want it, but you don't have to take it. But it is right there.
Yeah.
As is, the displacement. As Rome expanded in the Italian peninsula, they displaced several other indigenous tribes, absorbed some of them, killed the rest.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep gesturing and Look, colonial history, if you paint a broad enough sweep, is the same no matter where you go. A small group of people took over the land they were on, decided it was too small for them, and spread out, killing, plundering, and raping anyone who got in their way. That's every single empire to have ever existed ever.
Yeah.
Tell me an empire that's not. Maybe the Persians, but even then, that's
yeah.
The Persians at least for a while were decent once they'd done the killing and plundering and putting under control.
I mean, arguably, you could say.
I don't mean the Persians at Thermopylae. I mean other.
No. I mean, I'm saying arguably a case might be able to be made for Genghis Khan because he only did the raping and pillaging if they put up a fight.
That's a very Christian point of view. God only sends you to hell if you're naughty. That's what my brain just conflated that to. So yeah, but and there's an element of how much of it was fear, how much of it was respect. But there are empires in history that have said, no, speak your own language, worship your own gods, just pay your taxes and we're all good. We're all good, you're fine, we'll protect you from the invaders, just,
Once again,
yes.
Once again, I'll point to Genghis Khan.
But
as long as
when you've already raped, murdered, and pillaged 10% of the population, that element of fear comes in, and there's only so much good you can be credited with. And Genghis Khan wasn't the only one; he's just the most famous because of all the raping and the pillaging. But generally, that's where we're at. Now, that I think is a very loose conflation of Rome and America.
Yeah.
It's a very loose, like most cultures. If you go back far enough, you find runaways, brigands, and But it does set the tone.
Yes.
Because there is still an argument to be made that refugees came to these shores seeking safety after their world was destroyed by the enemy, and when they arrived, they feasted with the locals and tried to make peace, but by whatever machinations ended up going to war with the locals until things settled down and they took over. That's the Aeneid. That's how I've just summed up the Aeneid for you right there.
Yes. But there is another side of that Thanksgiving story that is a lot more biblical in its roots.
Okay.
And this is where I go back to what I mentioned last week, the story of Tisquantum, or how he's more popularly known as Squanto.
Isn't that the native who, like, that name rings a bell? Why does that name ring a bell?
Tisquantum lived, was a native, lived in what would become Plymouth Rock until he was captured by the English and sold into slavery.
Yeah.
And then eventually he either escaped or won his freedom, came back, found his tribe had been wiped out by a plague, and joined a nearby tribe. The Pilgrims land,
And he speaks English, therefore he becomes a translator.
He becomes the translator and shows them how to survive in this new land. And in some popular tellings, he becomes he became a Christian in his time as a slave, and then to make the Joseph allegory even more in your face, says that his tribulations were there so that he could be there to save lives from famine.
I have opinions.
Yes,
I see what you mean
that is actually the reason why I went in with the content warning.
Yes, I have opinions. Okay. First of all, anyone who converts to a religion while under the yoke of slavery, I use that term very specifically for a reason, the yoke of slavery, or under any oppressive regime, I have serious concerns about what they do and don't believe.
Yeah.
Because, right, we all like to think we'd be that brave person who would stand up and say, no, put a bullet in my head.
Yes.
But human beings will profess to a lot to survive. Some religions even actively encourage their followers, their members, if you are in a situation where you are being forced to either profess another faith or be killed, profess the other faith and live to fight another day and hold the faith secret in your heart. Yeah. Some religions allow for that. Obviously not Christianity, because it's got its whole martyrdom complex, but some religions do allow for that.
Yeah.
Famously Judaism allows for that. Like, say what you have to in public, keep the faith at home. Yeah. Keep it, survive. There's a reason Judaism survived so long, and it's not because they stood up and made martyrs of themselves.
Well, yeah, and also, most of their holidays are, they tried to kill us, we failed, so we eat.
Yes, but exactly. People have tried to kill them so much that it's become built into the religion. No, the most important thing is survival.
Yeah.
Which, fair. I have no argument against that. I think it's basic common sense and it's brilliant. I wish more religions did it. So, but on that basis, I would say what comes out of here and what's going on in here are two very different things.
Yeah.
You can say it till you're blue in the face, but no. especially when you're under something like slavery, you're in an oppressive regime.
Yeah.
You know, people say a lot of things to survive.
And
there's a reason torture is not a valid form of interrogation anymore. People say a lot of things to make the pain stop.
And also, what I recounted very likely isn't, the historically accurate story. It's the mythologized story.
Yes, it's the American myth of the civilized savage who found Christianity and became, all this stuff.
Yes.
And it's probably fuckery.
Yeah.
Probably. Is it possible that a native was kidnapped, sold into slavery, came back, and decided that actually white people have shown up and I don't want to be in chains again, so I'm going to help them?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tisquantum was an actual person, but
absolutely. I'm not denying that at all.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the whole Christianity thing I have concerns about.
And especially the whole, I'm like Joseph in the Bible. That's a bit too ham-handed to.
Yeah, that's very ham-fisted.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's probably not the only example of it, And this is the thing. Propaganda doesn't have to be outright lies. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to be possible.
Yeah.
As with all, every lie has a grain of truth. Every good lie has a grain of truth. Because that's what hinges it on reality. It's the same with stories. Every story has a grain of truth because that's what hinges it to reality and helps you suspend your disbelief for the rest of it.
Yeah. And part of the reason why I use that as my, main example is, one, it's the most obvious, and also it's a bad habit that American media producers have, and we're trying to get out of, but where every story, especially stories that you tell to children, have to be tied to a moral. And usually those morals are drawn from biblical sourcing because of America's,
reliance on Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah. So while a lot of the architecture of the American mythos is very Roman in its nature, there is a very biblical meat and sinew on that skeleton.
Yeah, no. And I do agree with you to that extent. I do agree because look, there's no denying that they build neoclassical architecture and then put a Bible in the foundations. That happened. It's a thing that happened. They claim that they're building a country with separation of church and state. And America was born. Okay. Let's leave that one alone. But, it's there's a lot of biblical stuff going on. But
the
thing you have to understand, the reason I keep bringing it back to ancient Rome is not because I think the biblical stuff's not important or because I think the biblical stuff's wrong when you say there's biblical stuff there. I bring it back because fundamentally the biblical stuff is built on ancient Rome. I'm just going one step deeper than you are. You're saying this is biblical. I'm saying, hang on, where's the Bible from, buddy? The Bible's from ancient Rome, and the Bible learned most of its tricks from the Romans and from Roman imperialism. That's why Christianity is the way it is. Christianity is the way it is because it took all the worst bits of Roman imperialism and didn't figure out syncretism because it decided it didn't want to do syncretism. Which is what Roman imperialism had a problem with in the first place.
It's hard to do syncretism when you only allow one deity to exist.
Yeah, monotheism and syncretism are fundamentally opposed viewpoints. You cannot be both.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried it. The Catholic Church tried it with the Trinity and the Celtic crosses and all that jazz.
Yeah.
They tried it, and they sort of managed to fudge it, but like I was 6 years old in Catholic school questioning the veracity of that one.
Yeah.
So let's leave that one where it is. But generally, syncretism doesn't work with monotheism unless you're saying that all gods are the same God and are one God, which is pantheism, which is its whole other kind of words I ain't getting into.
Or or you like go with that certain sect of Hinduism where each god is a facet of
a single god. Yeah, it's pantheism. But especially in white culture, pantheism very quickly leads to fascism and white supremacy, so let's not.
Yeah.
Not always, but enough that it's a comment worth making, just in case anyone decides they want to whack me about that.
Yeah.
But America was fundamentally built. There's a thing America has that a lot of countries don't. America, from its earliest foundation, is a planned country. America is not an accident. America was not born organically. It's a planned country. And to an extent, Rome was planned. Because you've got this culture where people at the highest levels give their lives building something that they know they're never going to see the outcome of.
Yeah.
For a perfect example of this, look at the Duomo in Florence. They built that thing. They started building that thing with no fucking idea how they were going to finish it.
Yeah.
That is like a microcosm of both America and Rome. Like, they built the thing and they threw it up. But they were building it at all different times, so the designs are a little bit different. But they try and make it gel. But they're not quite sure how they're going to finish. They know what they want it to look like, but they're not quite sure what's going to finish it. And they're waiting for some lunatic to come along with an egg to fix it. Like, you know, like just as a broad overarching idea. That's what ancient Rome was like. People, they were building an empire. They were building a republic, building a kingdom, if you want to go that far back. And the idea, these people, they gave their sweat, blood, and tears to build something that they knew was bigger than them, was a greater ideal than them, and that would long outlive them. Because there was this concept in ancient Rome that you die twice. You have your first earthly death.
Yeah.
You die the moment of your last breath. But you also die in the moment the last person on earth says your name. The last person to say your name says your name. You die at the moment you become lost to history.
Yeah.
When you view ancient Roman architecture through that prism, we are still saying the name Flavian.
Yeah.
We are still talking about the Flavian amphitheater. We are still talking about Agrippa's Parthenon. We are still talking about all of these, you know, Nero's Colossus, all these, the Arch of Tiberius, the Arch of Severus.
Yeah.
These names have lived for 2,500, 3,000 years and will live for another 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And that was the point. That was very much the point. These people were not doing it for immediate glory. They were doing it for long-term legacy.
Yeah.
Even as Rome falls, we still remember those names. Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, Augustus, these names. This is because these are the names that built Rome.
Yeah.
You can argue about Cleopatra, but she's in there. we talk about, and the reason, and America does the same. America very much does the same. There's a reason you have Carnegie Hall,
Yep.
Bloomsbury buildings, Yale libraries, Harvard libraries, Princeton libraries. There's a reason rich people in the Middle Ages like to plaster their names across hospitals and libraries. It's the same thing. It's this argument of there's a reason you go to Florence and you will hear the name Medici. You will hear the names Pazzi and Sforza, and you'll go to Rome and there's still bees on the architecture.
Yeah.
Because it's not about immediate glory, it's about leaving a legacy. And it really is. That's the urge here, and that was a very planned thing in America. You have your founders who decide, right, how are we going to make this stick? And everything they do is calculated. It's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's not even necessarily the strategically clever thing to do, but it is calculated, always with this view of we are building something we are not going to live to see.
Yeah.
We are working towards an ideal. We're building the foundations of the Chapel of Florence, and we're waiting for some lunatic in 200 years' time to come along and finish the dome. That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
We have created a Senate in ancient Rome, but Julius Caesar's going to come along eventually and he's going to revolutionize the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have built we've built the Circus Maximus in Rome, but the Flavians are going to come along and make the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Agrippa, the man, he's going to come along and he's going to build the greatest temple in history, smack in the center of Rome.
Yeah.
And we've done is created a place for him to do it. So what's going on here? We're waiting for people to come along to finish the job. And there's a level of faith required in that.
Though,
not just in religion, but I believe that there is someone one day who's going to be capable of doing that and who will have the motivation to do that. Which means that you believe that the thing you're motivated to build is worth it because you believe other people will be motivated to build it.
I mean,
and therefore it's all planned. It's all planned. It's not like Great Britain where the Romans arrive and then the Vikings arrive and then the Saxons. And it's all giant, and it just things fall down. They get built on and on. No, this is planned. Someone sat down with a piece of paper, a map, drew lines on a map, and said, "This is America.
Yeah,
this is what America's going to look like," and it's planned. There's a reason American states have straight line borders. Where the fuck have you ever seen straight lines on a map anywhere else in the world? Except Africa, where the colonies carved it the fuck up. And the bits of the Middle East that were carved the fuck up by Western powers. There is no such thing as a naturally straight border.
Yeah.
If your map has naturally straight borders, it was planned.
Though I will say the straight line borders are more of are more prevalent the further west you go, which
Yeah, because you created roads that go in straight lines for 500 miles, so you just made that the border, which is valid.
No, well, it's more that the early the like if you look at the eastern seaboard, the first colonies, and the bits that were colonized by France and Spain and later annexed, those have very natural looking borders. But when you get to the bits that were taken from power, taken from people that European powers didn't care about, that's when the borders go straight.
Yeah, look, if you asked those who lived on that land before the white man arrived with his telegraph pole and his railway lines, to draw the borders in that country, it would look a lot more natural because this tribe ends here and this tribe goes to that river and to those mountains and But white people like straight lines. I don't know. I guess I'm a historian, not a mind reader. Okay, I don't know. They like straight lines. I think they think it looks neat. It's easier to draw.
That's probably it. Is it's easier to draw and unfortunately, geography doesn't necessarily correspond to that, which is where border issues come up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there are certain parts of the American-Canadian border that literally are the middle of a dual carriageway road. Like, the fuck came up with that? That's clearly a cock-up. And that's because someone has planned it, but not planned it well.
Or Point Roberts, where kids have to cross the border 4 times to go to and back from school.
Exactly. That's just not well planned at all.
Yeah.
But it is planned. Because if you followed the natural curves of the earth and the topography and the weather patterns and the mountains and the rivers, you wouldn't have a situation like that. You wouldn't have points on a map in the middle of a river where 5 states meet or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's it's an important point. It's planned. It might be messy. It might not be planned well, but it is planned.
Yeah.
It's planned for any Brits who are listening in the audience. It's basically Milton Keynes, but bigger. It's planned. It's on a grid. It's planned. It's not, but I think that's where the comparison ends. So don't assume I mean that America is all old people and Formula One teams. Well, it's not.
Yeah, and once again, when you get like more on the eastern seaboard, the cities are very and then once again, grids become more like city grids are more of a Western America thing because those are the more obviously those
square.
are the more four.
It's easier to draw squares inside of a square.
Yeah.
Well,
more the first settlements were organic settlements, while the further west you go, the more foreplanting there is.
Exactly. And that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And you see that in ancient Rome. You see that the city is, they can't. Do you know they've been trying for 25 years to build a 3rd railway line in Rome? And they can't because every 25 foot or so, they just dig up some new ancient artifacts and the archaeologists have to be called in. Fucking ridiculous. It's madness. They will get there eventually, but it's just madness because it's not planned.
Yeah.
And they don't know what they're going to dig up. What the fuck? Can you imagine if you dug up New York City now? What would you find? And that's the point. America is planned, and but it's not planned as in carefully detailed. It's an idea, and America has always been an idea. And it is very much one of those build it and they will come. Yeah, Field of Dreams, all that jazz. Another great piece of American propaganda.
Yeah. If we're gonna do an American Mythos Month too, we definitely got to do Field of Dreams.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't do it this month, to be honest.
It's like Field of Dreams, An American Tale. Yeah.
So the reason I say it's planned is because you start to then look at America, and if you don't take the assumption that it's planned, you start to see what you think are coincidences.
Yeah.
Oh, that slave plantation has Roman columns. Oh, why is that building made of white marble? Why is there an eagle as their national symbol?
Because Benjamin Franklin didn't get his way.
Yeah, but all these things seem like coincidences. And some of them are. Some of them are just, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But most of them, if you look into the history of them, are deliberate.
Yeah.
Like, we have got writings from founding members of the United States Congress comparing their new America to ancient Rome.
And once again, one of the first cities founded after George Washington stepped down from being president is Cincinnati.
And what's the story of Cincinnatus?
He went back to his plastic.
Cincinnatus went back to his, again, George Washington, very deliberately drawing that parallel with Cincinnatus. But also, there's this... America likes to try and cherry pick its history, but you can't do that. Because the thing about Cincinnatus is they called the fucker back. They called him back when they needed him. When they needed a hand, they called him back. And that's why Americans are still arguing now about what Jefferson would have wanted. Because they keep calling the fucker back, they're not letting him rest.
Yeah, well,
but
I mean...
There's also the fact that Cincinnatus was, objectively, not a good bloke. Like, objectively was, bit murdery.
Though,
put it lightly, bit murdery.
That being said, I think a lot of the originalist, what would the founding fathers intend, is coming from people treating the Constitution like they treat the Bible.
They treat the Constitution like they treat the dictionary.
No.
And they treat the Bible like they treat the dictionary. They think it's prescriptive and not descriptive.
Well,
the Constitution. Also, okay. Well, seeing as you brought the Constitution, let's go there.
Yeah.
The Constitution was designed as a living document.
Yes.
It was never supposed to be static. You were never supposed to look at the Constitution as written and say, what did the original writer think? You were supposed to interpret it based on the context you were in. It was the Pirates Code. It was more guidelines than actual rules. It was supposed to grow and develop with the country. It was supposed to be a way forward. It was supposed to be, these are the things we can agree make us fundamentally decent human beings. These are the things we agree on. These are not the only things we agree on, but these are the things we agree on now, and we should add more to that as we learn and grow. And we should mix and match. Again, read the Anti-Federalist Papers. There is literally one that says there cannot be only 10 new amendments because people will think that's the only one they get.
But, and also, just my favorite example of why we should see the Constitution as a living document and why it was obviously designed as a living document. There are the 18th and 21st Amendments.
Mm-hmm.
The 18th Amendment started prohibition. The 21st Amendment ended prohibition.
Glug, glug, glug. But yeah, exactly. And that was the point. That was the entire point of the Constitution. Now, and the Constitution was a deliberate thing because you've got to understand that most of the early Americans came from Britain.
Yeah.
The white English-speaking ones, at least.
Yeah, and unfortunately, given the current political, given what needs to happen for a constitutional amendment, and
not happening.
The current political makeup of America we're probably never going to see another amendment.
Not unless something radical changes.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, when they came to America, they looked back at what they'd come from, which was a couple of decades of Cromwell.
Yeah.
which was not knowing one day to the next what religion you were, not knowing what religion your country was, not knowing whether your king had a head or not knowing which wife your king was on. Shit happened, okay? Shit happened. It was a long couple of centuries. Yeah. And they realised that the British Constitution's not written down. And therefore, anyone who fancies it and with enough muscle and enough supporters can ride roughshod over it. So the whole point of coming to America was, if we write it down, no one can argue. No one can say, oh, I've decided that I'm going to suspend habeas corpus, because habeas corpus is written the fuck down. This is what we said, and if you don't like it, get back on a boat and go home. But that also came with the caveat of, sometimes we're going to decide that other things are important too.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to decide that freedom of speech is an absolute right. And no one can take that away from us. So we're going to write it down. We're going to decide that if the government decides to start trying to round us up and kill us in the streets, we have the right to fight back. So we're going to write that down. And I can't remember what the Third Amendment is. But, you know, it's the American Constitution was, first and foremost, a working document designed to counteract everything they saw that was wrong with where they'd come from.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean it was supposed to cut off all future changes and possibilities. It was supposed to grow with the country. I am absolutely certain, because I've read the documents, I am absolutely certain that there were certain people in America's founding era who said, yes, the right to bear arms and form a well-organised militia now if the government tries to take over us. Who said, one day we're going to get to a point where we trust our government so well, where our government are made up of such good people, we're not going to need that.
Yeah.
It'll be there just as a check and as a balance against the rise of a fascist or of an oppressive government, but we're not going to need it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice to have. It's going to be something that gets lost to time eventually. That is basically what was certain opinions were made. Same with, you know, arguments about any other thing that's in the Constitution. Everything was up for debate.
Yeah.
And the Constitution was written with this mind of, everything has to be up for debate and everything has to stay up for debate. We the people of the United States of America, not me the big boss, not us the Supreme Court, not them the lawyers, not that one guy who sells hats made in China. You know, we the people, all of us equally, and I'm not American, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yet, all of us equally, and therefore we must vote. This founding myth of voting, everything must be voted on and agreed upon democratically. Everyone must have a right to a say. Everyone must stand up, as long as you're a middle-aged white landholding man. But you know, they got there in the end. That's what the amendments were for.
Yeah,
they got there. They're getting there, even. But you know, shit happens. You work with what you've got.
You know, while we're talking about, you know, the founding fathers, brings me to another point in my viewpoint, and what I alluded to when we discussed Hamilton, where the founding fathers are traditionally deified in a very Catholic way. I wouldn't say, I won't say Judeo-Christian because...
Are you suggesting they are sanctified?
Yes.
No. Just as the ex-Catholic in the room, no. They're not saints and they're not held up as saints.
Are deified in a very like Judeo-Christian way, but in and how I pointed out in Hamilton, that moves it from a deified in a Judeo-Christian sense to a deified in a classical sense, where we do actually see some of their flaws being portrayed.
Yeah, they're presented as mythical heroes.
Yes.
That I'll go with. I don't think they're made saints. I don't think they're canonized in the American Catholicism.
They're not.
Insofar as, if you conflate Americanism and Catholicism, which you probably shouldn't, just because
they're not.
Those two things were like
Americans don't pray to the founding fathers, but whenever they want to know how they feel about certain political issues, a large subsection of America will look at what the founding fathers wrote and cherry pick what fits what they already believe and use that as support, which is a lot of what they do with the Bible.
Yeah, that's not Catholicism. That's just Christianity generally. In fact, that's more Protestantism than Catholicism. Because Catholicism is a single unified idea as opposed to people cherry picking shit. But yeah. Funny how American Protestants taught you that was a Catholic practice.
Well, yeah, that the idea of holding up people as a kind of deity, viewing people in the light of deity, I was taught was a very Catholic thing.
By people who think Jeffersonian ideals are a thing that exist.
Okay. Yeah. But once again, biases.
Yes, biases. But yeah, no, you're right. And there is this thing of you canonize your, like JFK is an American martyr.
Yeah.
You put that out there. Martin Luther King's an American martyr.
Yeah, hell,
Lincoln to an extent is an American martyr.
Apologies to any indigenous viewers, but there's a freaking mountain in South Dakota that is essentially a shrine
to American martyrs and American, and
it's
creepy. It is.
Yeah, two founding fathers, Lincoln and Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Teddy, not
what
FDR.
Are those four people? Yeah, what do those four people have in common? Like, yeah. So,
Well, given the life Teddy lived, he kind of deserves to be mythologized.
Does he? Really?
Like, he was Chuck Norris before Chuck Norris was Chuck Norris.
So why don't you mythologize Chuck Norris?
I'd argue that we're in the process of doing it. Just, once Chuck Norris kicks the bucket, it'll probably get cemented as a full mythologization.
Yeah. Like Chuck Norris, the great defender of, like, American freedom or some shit.
Yeah.
A spiritual successor to Bruce Lee, and yeah, you can see it. See it happen. But yeah, people die in service in America. You send a hero up into the stars. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And again, very Roman practice, very Christian practice.
Yeah.
People die in service. What do Catholics do? I say we as if I'm still Catholic. I'm not still Catholic. They canonize them.
Yeah.
Mother Teresa's well on her way. Although, And it is that thing of they make people more than they are, but they also draw from history.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about man of the people.
Yeah.
Okay, let me spin you a yarn. A man of the people, a well-loved politician, killed potentially by his own side. The people are distraught. It nearly brings down the country. And then there's a power struggle after he dies. Who did I just describe?
Well, see, you described either Caesar or Kennedy.
Exactly. And do you think that mythology that's grown up around Kennedy is not drawing on the mythology of Caesar?
Yeah.
Is not taking the lessons from seeing how the mythology of Caesar grew to create a Saint John Kennedy? It's like the America goes gaga every November. I can't figure out why. Like, we don't go gaga every August for Diana.
Well, and
Like, what
I
the hell?
mean, and of course, we all know the truth. Kennedy wasn't really assassinated. He just, he just regenerated and became the first doctor.
Yeah, but even that feeds into this mythology of this man who is more than a man.
Yeah.
It leans into that mentality. And yes, it's a joke, but jokes have an element of truth as well.
Yeah.
That's why we get so pissed off at comedy we don't like, because it has an element of truth, and sometimes we don't like to hear it. Be it our truth, someone else's truth, or a truth that we don't necessarily want to see or hear about.
Yeah.
Just because it's not your truth doesn't mean it's not our truth. And that's not to say there is no truth. It's just that there is always three sides to every story.
Yeah.
Yours, mine, and the cold hard truth.
Yeah.
So, some people's truth is that Julius Caesar was a evil who was going to take over the empire, who was going to subjugate everyone. He was going to become an emperor and a king, and he was going to be evil. Some people's truth was that he was a man of the people. He fed the people. He put on games. He looked after the people, and he just wanted what was best.
Yeah.
And the cold hard truth is probably somewhere in between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same with Kennedy. Some people's truth is that he was a womanizing, bad politician who needed daddy to hold his hand and big brother to tell him what way to go, and didn't know his ass from his elbow.
Yeah.
And then there are some who, man of the people, wants to put a man on the moon, very good orator.
Yeah.
And the truth is somewhere in between. And as much as we hate to say it, you can say the same about Obama, about Trump, although they weren't assassinated. It's still there. Obama, when he was elected, a black man's going to run America. He's going to destroy racism. You look at it and you think, what were we on? Were we high? Like, the fuck? Putting all that on one man.
Yeah.
On one man and one family. What were we on?
Yeah.
And then you look back at it and you think, but we had reason to believe that. We had good reason to believe that. But we were still, the truth is somewhere in between. He wasn't evil, but he wasn't the perfect, he wasn't the black messiah who was going to lead America into a new era of anti-racism either. He was somewhere in between. Constitutional lawyer who happened to have a decent speaking voice.
Yeah.
Cool. And America does this. And America's not the only country that does it. So, when I say America does these things, I don't just mean America. I mean, every country does them, but we're talking about America right now.
Yeah.
Has a great man view of history. And you see it on the news all the time. I don't understand. Okay, let me give you a perfect contemporary example right now.
Okay.
If you ask most people who are surrounded by American media, who watch American news, who are on Twitter, who, generally are part of the English-speaking Western world.
Yeah. The Anglosphere, as I like to call it.
Yes, the Anglosphere. A weird country,
Yeah.
White, educated, industrialized, developed. Yeah, weird. They will tell you that the war in Ukraine was caused because Putin has an ego, and Putin is only being stopped because Zelensky's a hero.
Yeah.
The fuck? That's a children's story.
Yeah.
That's not even a little bit true. But there's elements of truth in it. Yes, Putin does have an ego. And yes, Zelensky has stepped up and become a hero.
Yeah. Well,
those are effects, not causes.
Yeah, if you look back to my Ukraine stream, I'd say that he didn't. Basically, Putin didn't factor in on how hard Ukraine would.
Yeah, exactly. But Zelensky's name has supplanted the Ukrainian people as the hero of the situation.
Yeah.
And we take this view because it's nice and simple. And it's easier to contrive of 3 or 4 people in a room arguing than it is millions of people being displaced and war. The human brain is just not equipped to deal with all that. Yeah, there's a great, I don't know if you get it in American schools. We got it in my school. When we were learning about propaganda and about the way it's used for good and bad purposes, we were shown 2 charity adverts for, I think, WaterAid. It might be WaterAid, it might be Food Aid, something daft like that. Doesn't really matter which one. And the first one said 100,000 people have been displaced, 10 million homes have been destroyed, blah, blah, blah. And it just fired numbers at you. And it was just, it was the kind of thing you'd expect on the 6 o'clock news. It was very X number of homes destroyed, this, that, and the other. The next piece of text was the exact same document, the exact same story. But instead of giving you all of that, it told you the story of one 9-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And they released both of these to different audiences. And the number of people who donated was almost 10 times in the story about the single person.
Yeah, or
because you can that's on your level. That's you, that's your child, that's your life. These numbers, they mean nothing. They're so big, your brain just doesn't compute them.
Yeah. Or to bring it back to the American mythos, there's a difference in comprehension between talking about the waves and waves of settlement transforming the land and talking about one guy walking across the country planting apple trees.
Yeah, exactly. You can talk about the millions, the hundreds of thousands of people who stood up when Martin Luther King started and walked behind him.
Yeah.
But most people will still have a stronger emotional reaction when you read them the I Have a Dream speech. Because it's I and it's me and it's personal. And this is what America does really well. It conflates the personal with the national. And it's a really clever use of propaganda, the way they do it. You see these beautiful artworks. You've got Nike in the Capitol building. You've got, and I say Nike because that's how it's pronounced these days.
Yeah.
You've got the Statue of Liberty. You've got these symbols of nationhood. And you've got Americans who carry a keyring of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
You've got Americans who have the Constitution tucked into their inside pocket.
Or some Americans who have Bibles with the American Constitution added to it.
Exactly. They make the national and the religious, they make it personal.
Yeah.
It's not just, again, going back to it, it's not the people.
Yeah.
It's we, the people.
So,
us, me, I am part of this. This is who I am. And it's all planned. And the reason I keep coming back to this is all planned. Because then when you look at the neoclassical architecture of southern slave plantations, and you see how they deliberately designed those plantations to look like ancient Roman and ancient Greek buildings. They did that because they are calling back to the power of an empire, the power of legacy, the power of colonization and imperialism.
yeah.
And that's what they're leaning on, and that's what they build their ideas of who they are on. And
Yeah.
it's not an accident. It's planned. It's deliberate. You don't accidentally throw up a marble building and call it the White House. You don't accidentally do that. Do you know why the White House looks like the ancient Roman Senate? Because it's supposed to. That's the point. No architect is building that thing and going, oh, that looks a bit like that thing in Rome. Funny that. No one's doing that.
Or
they're looking at ancient Rome and going, how can we bring that here?
Yeah. Though that being said,
which makes it really ironic that America claims to be anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. Just putting that out there. But again, propaganda versus reality.
Well, also that's that's an effect of the second wave of the American mythos, the Wilsonian ideal. But
yeah, okay.
But that being said, I had something I wanted to sense before we get too far from Johnny Appleseed. America also doesn't have any kind of a problem with trying to erase anything that doesn't mesh with their current understanding of what their mythos should be. Because Johnny Appleseed was an actual person, and he did actually plant a bunch of apple orchards across the country. However, most of those don't exist anymore.
Yeah, well, if you try and plant apples in the desert, they're going to die.
No, most of those were destroyed.
By?
Prohibition.
Cider.
Yep.
That tracks.
Most of the apples Johnny planted were cider apples, and cider apples can't be used for anything other than cider. And so when Prohibition passed, all those orchards had to be burned because the only use was making alcohol.
Yeah. Which, says a lot. And I mean, there are other sides to that story as well. Like this story of, words being changed on founding documents to reflect current opinions.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. There's a difference between adding an amendment to a living document.
Yeah.
And changing the exact wording of a specific historical document because you don't like the fact that it didn't include a certain subsection of society.
Yeah.
That's the difference between growth and propaganda.
Yeah.
That's if you're growth means that you learn from the past. You tear down your statues and you put them in museums.
Yeah.
Or you destroy them and stick a plaque up, whatever the fuck. You grow from it and you learn from it and you have the hard discussion. You don't hide it away and pretend it never happened and stick your fingers in your ears when anyone talks about it.
Yeah, or as I like to say, that's the difference between patriotism and nationalism.
Yes.
Where patriotism is you hold your, you believe in the ideals of the country and thus are not afraid to call out your country when it's not meeting those ideals. While nationalism is you believe your country's just the best and how dare anyone suggest it's not perfect.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, I know a lot of Europeans. I know a lot of Germans. I know a lot of Danes. I know a couple of French people even. And I'm not saying that for tokenism. There's a reason I'm calling out the names of those countries. And the most dangerous person in a democracy is a true patriot. And I don't mean a true patriot as in storms the Capitol because they think their fuckery person should be leader. I mean someone who genuinely looks at their country and says, we can do better, and gets angry because we're not. That's who's dangerous in a democracy. Because they're the people who are going to affect change. They're the people who are going to stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
They're the people who are not going to stand by and stop the count or let fascism take over. They're the people who are going to be walking vulnerable young women into abortion clinics to save them from the onslaught outside. They're the people who are going to do the work. But the most dangerous thing to any culture that is more nationalist than patriotic is patriotism. Because nationalism does not allow for growth or change because the country is perfect as is.
Yeah.
One person is right, might is right, ergo no change is required. No thought is required, no risk is required. I'm all right, Jack, fuck you. This is my utopia.
America always matched my ideals.
Yeah. This is my America, and if you don't like it, leave.
Yeah.
But that just causes stagnation. And, you know, we watched these films of showing this ideal of America. And it's really weird the way America does it because from the first day you hear the name America, United States, even in the name, these United States of America.
Yeah.
You're sold an ideal. You're sold a dream. The great American pipe dream. Unity, fraternity. See, I mentioned France earlier.
Yeah. Liberty, equality, fraternity.
Exactly. But you're sold this ideal. But somewhere along the line, and it's not just America, a lot of countries have done it. Great Britain. Yeah, as an example. You sold the ideal, but then you're not given the tools to make the ideal a reality. Because the ideal has stopped being something to strive for and has become a control mechanism.
Yeah.
And so this ideal of let's throw up a building that calls back to the might of the great Roman Empire and all these people under one government living and working in harmony. And, you know, that the house on the hill and the shining beacon and all of that. It's looked at that and it said, if we feed them that ideal, we can slowly hack away at what actually makes that ideal possible. and they're not going to notice because they're going to be too busy enjoying the brightness. They're going to be what's the line? Blinded by the light.
Yeah, and
there's a reason the next line's unintelligible.
The next line is wrapped up like a deuce and took a roller in the night.
You've got better hearing than me.
No, I've heard that song a lot. I could
but you've got better hearing than me.
I could probably karaoke it.
Yeah. And it is this thing of,
God damn it! Now I've got it stuck in my head.
You're welcome. But again, it's in your music.
Yeah.
I think one of the most ironic, funniest things I've ever seen in my life, I think it must have been the 2008 or maybe the 2004 Olympics.
Yeah.
The United States won the basketball.
Yeah.
They won gold in the basketball at the Olympics. And as it was announced that they won, the song that was played over the loudspeakers for them to celebrate to was Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And I just looked at that and I thought, that right there is indicative of everything I'm talking about here.
Or
a moment where you are sold the joy and the ideal and the honor of having won a gold medal at the Olympics, which again goes back to ancient Greece and Rome. That gravitas of that moment. And yet the propaganda says you were born in the USA. This is amazing. This is USA. Go America. But does anyone actually listen to the lyrics of that song?
Or how many?
That song's patriotic, but it sure as hell ain't nationalist.
Or how many politicians use pink houses as their campaign music?
Exactly. And it is very much, you sold the ideal, but you're also so Springsteen, Bon Jovi, hell, even Meatloaf.
Yeah.
You're
or John Mellencamp.
John Mellencamp.
Yeah.
Here's the other one. Hell, even Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers. You know, Elvis.
Yeah.
Little Richard. The classics. They sing these songs. And when the history is bad, and this is something I've seen discussed on social media recently, when the history is bad, America's not the only country that does it by any means, caveat, etc. When it's bad history, when it's history that you're a little bit ashamed of, you don't want to have to justify or explain.
Yeah.
Pictures in the textbook are in black and white. But the thing is, America's not old enough to have black and white pictures in its textbooks. Frankly, you know, like, there are colour pictures of the first black girl being taken to a white school.
Yeah.
There are colour pictures of lynchings.
Yeah.
There are colour photographs of the KKK. There are colour photographs of the March on Washington.
Yeah.
Of Woodstock. Hell, there are colour photographs of World War II.
Hell, there's color video of Woodstock.
Exactly. Is there a dog howling in your background?
No, that's a siren.
That genuinely sounded like a wolf howling in the background.
Yeah, I think it's a fire. No, yeah, I think it might be a fire truck.
Yeah, and so you see these pictures of Ruby, little Ruby, on her way to school, and they're in black and white in the textbook.
Yeah.
But that picture was originally colour. And you can find that original picture if you Google it.
Yeah.
It's been deliberately made black and white. It's not an accident. because making it black and white gives it a sense of age, of distance.
Yep.
You know, if you get a picture of Joe Biden and make it black and white, he has a lot more gravitas in that picture. He looks more statesman-like. Making the pictures black and white is like building the Roman columns. You're giving gravitas where there shouldn't be any. You're creating distance, but you're also creating a sense of history.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to make it history. But when it's the Romans, they're trying to bring that history to the present. That's why these things are so big and imposing.
Yeah.
It's like, don't get me wrong, some of the American South plantations, keep coming back to that, the Capitol building, they're beautiful. They are objectively beautiful buildings. Gorgeous, in the extreme. Like, kudos to the architect. Fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to side-eye anyone who tries to plan their wedding at one of them. Because...
yeah.
Ew. Gross. Because there's a history there. But there's a reason these buildings were made to look like that. Because they're calling back to the strength of empire, the power of Rome, the might of Rome.
Yeah.
The Great Republic.
Or how a certain, unfortunately sizable portion of the population worships the treason rag.
Yeah. That too. But
yes.
Again, there's this America does have this urge to call back to the Bible, call back to ancient Rome. So I can see why you would say it's trying to be Israel, or it's trying to be the conceptual answer to what Israel is, a conceptual answer to in the minds of some fundamentalists.
Yeah.
But I feel like conflating America with Israel is a very fringe view. Like, I wouldn't know of that view if I didn't know you.
Yeah.
And like, I've got a degree in this country. Like, I know shit about your country. I like to think I know my I like to think I know my shit.
Yeah.
You know, I did the time, but conflating it with a promised land, a new world. There was a time like there are contemporaries of Shakespeare who write poetry. And there's a line, and I think it's John Donne. It might be one of the others, sort of that sort of era. And he describes a woman as my great unexplored territory, my new America. Which, set the misogyny aside for 1 second, is very telling about what America represents and what it's always represented since it was found.
Yeah.
A new world, and you know, the final frontier. And again, do you think Star Trek is not propaganda? Bitch, please. Yeah. They did an entire fucking episode. They did a 4th of July episode. Don't come at me with that.
Oh yeah, the 4th of July episode with the
Captain Kirk leading the rebellion.
Yeah, with the Yangs and the Coombs.
Yeah, which let's leave that one alone.
Yeah.
But it's propaganda. In the same way that same TV show did an episode about Apollo, the ancient Roman deity, and the deity was made to look ridiculous. Because to Americans and Christians, polytheism is ridiculous.
Yes, Who Weeps for Adonis, which we might actually cover in the near future.
We should do. It's a good episode to cover. And so America is fundamentally, these are your takeaways. America is planned. Any output from America and I hate to say the word content because it's 2022 and we need to like stop with calling everything content. But
Yeah.
media, news, architecture, history, politics, geography, sociology, everything you view coming out of America, everything in America, hell, everything in the world to an extent is planned. But in America, it's been planned from the start.
It depends. It depends on it depends on the fundamentalist family.
Yeah.
I grew up with at least the original series and with Enterprise, because Enterprise actually aired while I was there to watch it. Next Gen and Deep Space Nine passed me by because they aired during school hours.
But Star Wars, again,
Yeah.
Star Wars had definitely propaganda.
Yeah.
The young Messiah, the orphan Messiah, stands up against the great evil empire, whose leader just so happens to be his father, the king, and brings them down by the power of force and pluck and love for the pretty girl. I don't know. I've not seen Star Wars.
Though I will say, Star Wars being, that comes like Star Wars that's largely second hand, third hand, because Lucas pulled a lot of his inspiration for Star Wars from the 40s, like the pulp fiction of the 40s and the old short reels that you'd see, but that you'd see before features.
Why was Pulp Fiction of the 40s imagining a great empire that the plucky little guy would have to stand up against?
Yeah, no, like I said, it's like I won't argue that propaganda is baked into the bones of Star Wars. It's largely in the genes of its predecessors.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, no, it's not. I'm just saying that there is a slight degree of separation there.
Okay, so when was the first Star Wars movie released?
Like
I'm going to lead you down by the nose down the garden path a bit here.
1979, I think.
Okay, late 70s.
Yeah.
What was the colloquial name for the push to get a man on the moon? The space race?
Yeah, yes, the space race.
Hey, we all know what the space race is. When I talk about the space race, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, it was 1977. Yeah, okay. See, I thought you were going to try and say it was Star Wars, and I'm like, no, that was Reagan's space project that fell flat.
No. I'm getting there. So, what was the project of lasers in the sky to defeat the Russians called?
Yes.
Right.
Star Wars.
Right. Do you think that's not like that's like just that's so unsubtle, it's firing a torpedo up your uncovered engine. Like, that's all I know about Star Wars, don't at me. Something about a torpedo up an uncovered engine. I don't know.
Well, it was an exhaust port, but
was it a hole in the fucking ship that shouldn't have been in the position it was in because it was badly designed? Like, so badly designed, they made a later film that retconned it to say it was designed deliberately that way as sabotage. Like, this is what I know about Star Wars, folks. It's not a lot. Do they have postage stamps under the evil empire or whatever the hell? Because everything I know about it could fit on one. You know, they have the shiny swords that go zing zoom. I don't know. Okay. They have the shiny swords. The colours of the shiny swords tell you what side they're on. I don't know. Like,
and if it's purple, it means it's being wielded by Samuel L. Jackson, and he wanted to have a purple lightsaber.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks. Okay, so, but yeah.
Yeah.
Colour coordinating. Star Wars coordinates the colour of the lightsaber. Prior to Star Wars, colour coordination happened on the frontier when people were in gunfights. So you knew who the goodies and baddies were on screen in black and white.
Oh yeah, black hat versus white hat.
Yeah.
Also,
that's not. And what were those Western movies? When do Western movies mostly come out in American history? When America's fighting wars it can't win and needs a morale boost.
Yeah. Though,
propaganda.
Fun fact: all of the historical westerns with gunfights are based off one event.
Gunfight at the OK Corral.
You want to know why?
Because that's the only gunfight we've got record of.
Yep. Yeah.
I reiterate, American history graduate.
and also, fun fact: gun control was very prevalent in towns in the Old West.
Also, most cowboys were not white.
Yeah.
Anymore? But yeah, no. Gun control was incredibly tight in the Old West. This idea of walking into a saloon geared up for a war, nah.
Yeah.
You get kicked out. But again, American propaganda. This idea that everyone walked around with guns on their hips. No, because they weren't fucking animals.
Yeah.
Not fucking animals, verb, like they weren't animals.
Yeah. And
I liked Tombstone as well, native.
I'll have to take your word on it. I haven't seen it.
It's a good movie. It's worth watching.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's the best Western, but it's definitely up there. But to be fair, I probably couldn't name the best Western because I'm not a big Western fan. But it's definitely up there of the ones.
I mean, Logan's up there, and I will die on that hill that Logan is a Western.
I mean, there's arguments about the entire X-Men franchise just being like part of the Holocaust genre, but let's not go there.
Yeah.
You know, like we can take this in a lot of directions. Yeah. This is what happens when we don't have a single piece of media to discuss, folks. We just go off on tangents. It's fun. We like it.
Yeah.
We try not to start wars before we get back.
Yeah.
But you know, this whole thing of
but speaking of the cowboy as the American mythic hero, we are going kind of long on time, so I'm just gonna have to say that we definitely need to do a sequel, American Mythos Month, and I'm going to submit as one of those pieces the Kingsman 2, the Golden Circle.
Okay.
Well,
I haven't seen Kingsman, so no fucking idea.
Yeah, so you've seen Kingsman 1, yes?
No.
Okay.
Should I have? Is that the one where Colin Firth's like a super spy and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they basically where they're gentlemen spies with weaponized Britishness.
Basically. I just remember the advert of what was it? Oxford, not Brogues, and he doesn't spill his drink because he's fighting off all the evil people in the pub.
Yeah.
I think it was a Carlsberg advert, but don't quote me. Might have been a Guinness advert.
But yeah,
There was an advert for something.
so the Kingsmen, all their shtick is like very British upper class, all spy gadgets, right?
James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond. Well,
We should do a British Myth Month.
Yeah, for the second one, they learned that there is a sister organization in America called the Statesmen, and their shtick is cowboys.
Oh, I'm just imagining an American with like a Colt revolver and a Brit with like a
and
umbrella and a cup of tea.
And there's
and somehow
like
that's an even fight.
Yeah. Yeah, there are quite a few very good Matthew Vaughn fight scenes because Matthew Vaughn can direct a fight scene with that involve an electrically charged lariat.
I'm not familiar with that word.
Lasso.
Electrically. What, like the rope's electrified, or like you press a button and it spins itself? Like
the rope's electrified.
So you've basically took electrified fence and turned it into a lasso.
Also, it's like spy electrified, so it also cuts through shit like a laser because spycraft, because gadgets.
Electric cuts through laser.
Well, so it's sci-fi spy gadget.
Yeah, but no. Yeah, we should. But yeah, America's planned. That's not to say that there's some like, and don't anyone, after all I've said of this, I've just realized what that might possibly read as.
Yeah.
There is no like secret world order directing the planet or anything. Like that's just that's an anti-Semitic thing, and that's not welcome here. Like take that shit and go away with it.
And
what I'm getting at is people build because they want a legacy, not because they're not.
And America was planned in that it was planned by committee.
The problem is anything that's planned by committee goes wrong. Have you ever been on a committee? I don't recommend it. Nothing gets done. You have to have a meeting to discuss.
Look at America.
The time of a meeting to have a meeting about the thing you want to discuss.
Yeah, look at America. America was planned by committee.
That explains a lot. It just does. It explains so much.
Oh, and one last little tidbit on American mythos and propaganda. For a while, there was a fringe. Oh, I'm not sure how fringe it was, though. There was a theory in paleontological circles that mastodons were carnivorous, and not only that, but they still roamed the Great American Plains, because Jefferson basically pushed that after the Lewis and Clark during the Lewis and Clark expedition, because he was jealous of African megafauna.
Okay. Let me translate that into normal people speak. There was a dinosaur people theory that ancient elephants existed in America that Jefferson decided existed because he was jealous of actual elephants in Africa.
Yes.
The fuck? This the man you base your country's ideals on. Says a lot. Explains a lot. Never trust the creepy, like the fringe dinosaur people. Trust the dinosaur people, but not the fringe dinosaur people. Those people are weird. No. Back away slowly. No sudden movements.
So,
yeah. Can you tell I have zero chill when it comes to ahistorical propaganda bullshit. Oh, and by the way, pyramids are built that way for a multitude of reasons. Largely because in certain cultures, pyramids are built to worship sky deities, and that's how you get to the top.
Yes.
Some are built as tombs because they are like monuments to the heights a human being can reach, and some of them are literally meant to be staircases for the gods to climb down to come to the earth. Like, they all have different reasons.
Well, and here
None
I
of
thought
them are that the ancient people came on alien spaceships and told the savages how to build them. Thank you.
no. See, I thought that there was one central reason, but that central reason was that's the shape that where it's easiest to get rocks to stack together and not fall down.
It's not though. That would be a cone, but yeah, it's a good point. But obviously, if you were just stacking rocks up, you wouldn't have big chambers and stuff inside them.
Yeah.
So the argument doesn't fly. But yeah, look,
I mean, like if you're gonna make a tall structure out of stone blocks, it's gonna end up looking pyramid shaped.
no, it's not. It's going to go sideways and be in Italy, and people are going to take photos like this.
Yeah. Okay, if you want it to remain stable, it's gonna look pyramid shaped.
Frantically trying to think of a big, tall thing that's not pyramid shaped.
You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Physics. The reason is physics. Physics. Yeah.
That wasn't just us repeating the word physics. We were just speaking such advanced physics that the translator balked and just said physics.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, any country, and look, Hollywood answers to the American government. The American government does not answer to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood doesn't make war films without the say-so of the Pentagon. In general.
I mean, they do.
In general, there are exceptions, but in general.
I was going to say they do. They just can't use any of the cool toys that the Pentagon lends out to people who do ask for permission.
Look, the American doesn't know, the Pentagon doesn't know where half of its cool toys are. Let them sort that shit out first, you know? But look, basically what I'm saying is American culture is, on a good day, when the wind's in the right direction, about 68% bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, in imperial terms. I don't know what it is in metric. America doesn't work in metric.
Yeah.
Or it does, but only at the really high levels that no one actually knows about, like NASA and shit. Because they work with the rest of the world. But generally, like, the 68% imperial units of bullshit go into every piece of American media. And architecture. And news. And politics. And music. And, like, even its fucking clothes and shit. Like, Levi's is a great American brand.
Yeah.
Like, the great rugged pair of jeans that'll last you 40 years. And
yes.
Okay. And Stetson and all that jazz. It's all bound up in American culture. Now, is that to say you shouldn't enjoy American media and you shouldn't engage with it? Absolutely not. You'll be bored to tears.
Yeah.
You'll have to learn 8 different languages just to follow most European films. Which I don't recommend because they do get mixed up in your brain and you end up speaking Spanish to Italians and French to Poles, which is at best confusing.
And like if you go with following Japanese media, you're going to have to get cool with a lot of weird shit really quickly.
Yeah, and I mean that's great.
Joking.
Yeah, I mean that's Japanese culture, but you are going to have to get cool with a lot of weird shit really quickly because you're not used to that brand of weird.
Yeah.
Like just as they have to get used to American brand of weird, you're going to have to get used to their brand of weird. And their brand of weird is like, well, it's weird. And I mean yours is weird, but theirs is weird. Okay, it's just weird. It's just weird.
Also,
and it's weird to us because we're not used to it, and we're weird to them because they're not used to it.
Well, while we're on the topic of media from other cultures, I've said it before in comment sections, but I'll go ahead and say it out loud. I'm very, very convinced that the occult, demonic panic mongering is very much just cultural supremacist, driven by cultural supremacist views, whether intentionally or unintentionally, depending on who's actually saying it.
I love how you said that as if you were expecting pushback. Like, no, that's just objectively fact. But okay. Question everything twice. Because the first time you question it, you're just going on vibes, and vibes ain't good. You need citations.
Yeah.
But if it's got bad vibes, go check out the citations. That's usually where you'll find the bad juju. But yeah, like check shit, think things through. By all means, enjoy your propaganda movies. We all love a good episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We'll all sit and watch SVU on when we're bored on a Friday night. Whatever. Like, enjoy your propaganda, but don't forget that it's propaganda. And don't forget, because the propaganda does like to sells you the ideal. But don't forget that for every time you're sat there watching the ideal and watching the propaganda, you're not actually out there doing the work to make that ideal a reality. They're feeding you what feels good to keep you on your ass. And don't go the whole other way and be like, question everything and I know better and the government, there's a great cable on conspiracy. No, there isn't. But there is a cultural pressure to create a homogeneous mindset in which the ideal is held while simultaneously accepting the less than ideal reality. This is otherwise known as doublethink. Yes, we got all the way 2 hours 18 into it before I said that word. Yeah. But this is known as doublethink. There is a great essay on it. I'm sure you can find it. It's by a fellow called Orwell. Strongly recommend reading it. It's a great read. And if you actually understand that essay, you'll understand a lot of what I've been getting at, because foundationally that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to be taken in by the bright lights, the city streets, the marble columns, and the great fountains, and the lakes, and the beauty, and the progress of mankind, and the manifest. Very easy to be taken in by it all.
Yeah.
But maybe don't. But that's what. Look, if let's say hypothetically for a second there was a conspiracy to keep us all stupid sheep who don't fight for the future. Let's say there is a conspiracy. Not that I think anyone's intelligent enough to hold that view that that's what needs to happen and actually hold a conspiracy together for that long. Let's say there was. How would you combat that conspiracy? It's a thought experiment now. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy. But if there was a conspiracy to keep you stupid, to keep you obedient, to keep you glued to the TV, the most keep you glued to your smartphone. The most revolutionary act is to get the fuck off your ass, unplug, and do the fucking work to make the ideal a reality.
Yeah.
And so, if that's what motivates you to do that, then by all means believe it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Just don't go nuts and start storming the Capitol, because that's too far.
Yeah.
And all conspiracies have a grain of truth.
Yeah.
Like propaganda and lies and stories.
Yep.
Yeah. But also don't forget, the marble columns are white in America. They were painted gaudy colours in ancient Rome. Don't forget that. That bit's important.
Yeah.
And if it makes you angry to know that fact, makes you angry to know that the ancient Roman monuments that were pure white marble were actually painted garish colours and covered in decoration, you probably want to sit with that and ask yourself why. And what you've been told was so important about the fact that they were pure white marble.
Yeah.
Because what's important about the fact that they were pure white marble is the reason there are buildings in America made of pure white marble. And that's a problem.
And I think that's a very good closing thought. Now, I did want to have a discussion on like Superman and the American mythos, because because a couple of the pieces that we talked about this past month drew from Superman. That being said, that is very much like a big enough talk to be its own stream, and we are way too far in. And by the time I wanted to bring it up, we were already way too far into it. So it's like, no, that's got to be its own thing.
Superman, everything I said about the great man view of history, but propaganda.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Said.
And with that, do you have any shilling?
Nope.
Okay.
I feel like it's a bit cheap to shill on a stream about propaganda.
Yeah.
But, or at least to call it that.
Okay, do you have any announcements?
No.
Okay. So next week, we won't be having an episode of Meaty Musings because it's Christmas, and I don't like interviewing or interfering or what's the word? Competing. I don't like putting myself up as competition to the 24-hour, well, more than 24-hour, because it's the basically purple
the
rhyme.
atheist anti-Christmas.
Purple Rhymes with Orange every year sets up a marathon stream for that takes place over the entirety of Christmas everywhere in the world.
Which is like 38 hours at least.
Yeah. So that people, can tune in and not be alone on Christmas.
Yeah.
I am actually taking up a leg of that. I will be running on from 9 p.m. to 1 in the morning from 9 p.m. Christmas Eve to 1 in the morning Christmas Eastern Standard Time. I was going to run a D&D game, but I didn't have confirmation of a party to give me enough time to set it up, so it's just going to be a hangout stream. Might set up some Risk, might set up some Cards Against Humanity, who knows.
Cards Against Humanity on Christmas Eve. There's a beautiful irony in that.
Yeah.
You need to do that.
Also, so either either on New Year's Day, depending on how everyone feels, or more likely on the 8th of January, we're going to pick up with the Disney Renaissance month and start with Mask of the Phantasm as a counterpoint.
Look, I love you. I do. And I appreciate what you just tried to do. But when Ring says, maybe New Year's Day, depending on how everyone feels, what Ring means is, maybe New Year's Day, depending on if Noodles got home from the New Year's Eve party yet.
Yes.
And if Noodles sober enough to string a sentence together.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm planning a quiet one this year, so who knows? But yeah.
And basically that'll decide whether or not there's an actual end of the month recap discussion stream.
So you are hinging the entire schedule for January on whether I'm hungover on one day. I mean, good luck with that, buddy.
Well, basically there are 5 Sundays in January. And we have 4 movies to cover.
Yeah. Sandy said limp noodle. It's not so much limp noodle as it is drunk noodle. It's like thoroughly soaked and squishy noodle.
Insert things aren't limp when drunk noodle is around joke.
And yeah. Also insert drunk noodle means no monetization comment here.
Yeah.
But yes.
So, next week I'll be streaming late Christmas Eve, and then January's Disney Renaissance month. So we won't be getting Media Musings for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah. So that being said, happy holidays. Whatever you celebrate, if you celebrate. If you don't celebrate, stay warm, stay cozy. Plenty of blankets. Watch the atheist stream. Whatever you do, keep safe, keep warm, keep dry. And we will see you in the new year.
Yeah. And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.
And remember, take care, be good. And if you can be good, especially New Year's Eve, be careful.
Yep. Happy holidays and have a happy new year.